15 coins. Jaeger put his hand in his pocket and counted them again. 1, 2, 3. There were exactly 15 of them. Rubles, 2 rubles, 5, sometimes 10. Their total value was not important, the main thing was that they were 15. No more and no less. When he counted 15 coins, the muscles in his face relaxed, and he allowed himself a smile. It was sunny outside. The grandmothers were cozying up on a bench outside one of the houses. They pulled off their shawls and exposed their gray heads to the warm rays. They were chatting lively about something, occasionally casting oblique glances at passers-by. Igor walked past the old women and smiled at them with a wink. 2 pairs of incredulous, slightly perplexed colorless eyes stared at him. He slipped his hand into his pocket again and counted the coins. 15. No, today was definitely a very good day. The night before, he had met a wonderful girl. He was coming up from the subway, she on the other hand, was coming down. At some point it happened that they were both immersed in their heavy thoughts, and didn't notice each other. A slight nudge to the shoulder, and Jaeger heard a short scream. He quickly drew himself out of his musings, and looked at the one who had so unceremoniously disturbed his peace. The girl was sitting on the steps, and was also looking at him. Their eyes met. He did not notice how he put his hand in his pocket. 1, 2, 3. 15. The anxiety and excitement were gone. He smiled, she smiled sweetly back. The man felt an incomprehensible warm feeling arise inside. When the girl tried to get up, she slipped on her high heels and sat back down on the step. This really made the man laugh. He didn't even think he could have offended her that way, but he couldn't help himself. The way she clumsily sat back down made him think of a penguin from the show Watch and Laugh. The penguin had also tried to clumsily climb up several times, but invariably dropped back down onto the ice, spreading his paws ridiculously. He laughed, remembering the penguin. After a second she laughed too, realizing what a comical position she was in. Then he, like a gallant cavalier, gave her a hand and helped her up. The moment his hands clasped hers together, a warm feeling ran through his body, and made him shiver. He had never felt this way before in his life. He reached into his pocket with his free hand. 1, 2, 3, 15. They stood across from each other, and looked into each other's eyes. As he looked into her delightful green eyes, something pricked him in the heart, and made him shudder harder. He counted the coins again. 15. He smiled again, the girl in return. He tossed her a few phrases about knowing a place that made great marbled beef steaks. He wasn't much of a steak fan himself, but he hoped she would like the idea. She said she wouldn't mind having dinner with him. Tonight they were meeting at a cozy little restaurant that had good food and good music. And so he walked and thought about how often small accidents can make a big difference in life. Just yesterday everything was very different. He was working as a designer for a small greeting card company. It was an ordinary day at work, after which he drove home. His mind was spinning with thoughts of the work he had done. As he drove up to the house, his thoughts changed to others. He began to think about what he was going to cook for dinner. He lived alone in a small studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. A designer's salary was only enough for one room and an apartment in a not-so-well-to-do area of town. His choice came down to 2 dishes, dumplings or macaroni and cheese. Both did not require much cooking time and, more importantly, did not require any culinary talents. After dinner he would turn on the television and spend the evening watching movies he had already seen more than once. Then he would fall asleep. And then he met her. By chance. All his thoughts were now about something else, and Jaeger had no desire to return to those dull, monotonous thoughts. The most important thing was that he was able to talk to her. Of course the coins didn't play the least of it. They helped him again, as they had always helped him. But somehow he had never thought before that they would help him overcome his shyness in talking to girls. He no longer remembered when the change began to jingle in his pocket all the time. When he was a child, his father used to get drunk a lot. He had a demanding job, so after almost every shift he went to the store and got a bottle of vodka. He drank it at dinner, and it helped him to relax a little after his hard work. His mother never stopped him. She knew very well how it could end. Jaeger's father was not a bad worker in the factory, a hard worker, respected in the team, but at home he was a completely different person. Later, Jaeger learned that people like his father are said to have devils in quiet places. Except that in his father's maelstrom there were the best devils. When his father finished his last shot, he put it down on the table in a loud voice. The sound spread throughout the apartment, making Jaeger shudder. A groggy, slightly angry look looked at his wife. Little Jaeger knew what that meant, and so he tried to run as quickly as possible to his room and hide under the bed. For the next few hours he heard loud screams and the sound of broken dishes. His father loved to make scandals. Jaeger shuddered at every sound and tears welled up in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly and prayed that it would be over quickly. His worst moments were when his father burst into his room. He yelled loudly, calling for his son. The man warned that he would punish him if he didn't come out of his hiding place right away. But Jaeger knew the punishment would come anyway, so he crawled even further under the bed. Then his mother's pleas were heard, followed by a couple of claps, which the boy eventually learned to identify as blows to the face. The mother would fall silent, interrupted only by quiet sobs. Jaeger saw his father walking around the room. Saw only his feet. His father called out for him, but his alcohol-impaired brain could never guess that the child might be hiding under the bed. After several minutes of violent tantrums, the father would leave the room and continue beating the mother. The boy, huddled against the wall, continued to listen to his father's tantrums and his mother's bitter sobs. When his father left the room, Jaeger kept seeing a couple of coins on the floor. Maybe those coins were leftover wages, maybe they were change from a bottle of vodka. Jaeger didn't know. But he saw coins lying quietly on the floor. Big and small, pennies and rubles. Some of them looked new, some were already covered with dark patina. They always lay quietly on the floor, and did not care about the scandal that was going on behind the door. At first he didn't touch them. My mother would come into the room to clean and pick them up. After another scandal they would reappear. The boy would look at them and try to squeeze into the floor harder when he heard the new blows and his mother's cries. But the more he looked at the coins, the more he liked them. His father yelled, hitting his mother. The boy was afraid, and the coins lay quietly on the floor. They were not afraid of the scandal and the threatening father. They were completely indifferent to all dangers, and the boy really wanted to be like those coins. Jaeger began to crawl out from under the bed and take them one by one. He knew he could never become one of them for sure, but he really wanted to be friends with them. He stuck his head out from under the bed, waited for more screams, and crawled quickly toward the coins. Pressing himself against the floor, breathing heavily, he was afraid his father would burst into the room. The thought flashed through his mind that his father was scattering the coins on purpose to get the boy out of hiding. As soon as he took one, his father would burst into the room, laughing loudly. But that didn't happen. The boy clutched the coin tightly in his hand and crawled back under the bed. As he clutched the coin, he could feel how calm it was. It didn't shake, it didn't sweat, it was still a cold, metallic coin. As time passed, the boy crawled out from under the bed more and more and took more and more coins. When enough of them had accumulated, he counted them. 1, 2, 3 rubles, 2 rubles, 5. He didn't take them to buy ice cream or lemonade. He took them to count them. When they fell from one palm of his hand to the other with a soft ringing sound, he became as calm as they were. More often than not, 15 coins piled up. There was a dog barking, and Jaeger froze. He put his hand in his pocket again. 15. A sigh of relief escaped his lungs. He looked toward the park. Behind a small hedge, a young girl was playing with her dog. She was tossing a plastic plate, and the short spaniel was running after her merrily, barking at the same time. After counting the coins, Jaeger smiled. Nothing would spoil his day today. Hi, Igor arrived a little before the girl and spent 10 lingering minutes waiting. He was worried, he was nervous. During that short period of time he counted the coins 20 times, and it helped a little. At least outwardly he remained calm, although everything was raging inside him. "Hello," she said. She smiled, and he tried to smile back, his hand reaching into his pocket again. Only when she showed up did Jaeger realize that he didn't know what they were going to talk about. What do they talk about with girls on dates? He had seen many melodramas where the handsome heroes have fun and carefree dialogues with their female companions. The girls are laughing, giggling, and enthusiastically participating in the conversation. But this wasn't a movie, and Jaeger wasn't a handsome hero. He was almost 30, but his experience with the opposite sex was reduced to a few phrases with salesgirls at the box office stores and rare conversations with girl colleagues at work. These conversations were dry, almost official, and not very interesting. Among his acquaintances there were few girls, or rather his acquaintances were few. He communicated rarely. With such a pretty girl, who a minute ago had fluttered through the door of the restaurant, he communicated for the first time. She held out her hand to him, hoping he would shake it in a friendly way. He smiled again nervously, his hand in his pocket, where he counted the coins relentlessly. Not a bad place. The girl overcame the awkward pause and sat down across from him. "I've never been here before." "Yes," Jaeger encouraged her. 1, 2, 3. He paused for a moment, counting the coins. "I read that Zhukov rested here once, when he came to our city for a concert." "Really?" She looked at him in surprise. "Yes," Jaeger confirmed. "True, he was taken to the hospital after that and had to cancel the concert. So never order pasta with cream and cheese here." For a few seconds she looked at him perplexed. It seemed to Igor that he had said something wrong. He put his hand in his pocket and began to count the coins. 1, 2, 3. Maybe she didn't like my story. Maybe I'm saying something wrong? Maybe she didn't like my voice? Or maybe I'm not dressed right. He stared at her, straining into his chair. She laughed. Looking at her, Jaeger couldn't keep from smiling. He had never seen anyone laugh like that next to him. At best he was bestowed with rather restrained smirks and half-smiles. And the girl laughed very merrily. He wanted to laugh too, but held back, deciding he'd rather count the coins. "You really know how to kill an appetite," she said through laughter. "You did it on purpose, didn't you, to make me order less? You must scare all the girls with stories like that, don't you?" There was no anger, judgment, or anything bad in her voice. She was joking with him just as he was joking with her. Only he didn't know that his quite serious fact could turn into such a joke. The tension was gone. It made him feel good. Her joyful smile and warm gaze made him feel a slight prick in his heart again. He thought about how it wasn't so hard to communicate with girls. Any phrase casually thrown in could be very unintentional. Here he said a few words, and they are no longer strangers like they were a few minutes ago. Here he said one phrase, and they are already looking at each other as strangers. And jokes take on a different value when two people like each other. For some reason he felt that it would be very easy for him to communicate with her, and even if he did not succeed in something, she would definitely support him. "Are you ready to order yet?" A waiter came over to their table. A young boy with long bangs slicked back on his right side. He looked blankly from Jaeger to the girl. He raised an eyebrow in surprise as he observed their incomprehensible merriment. "Get us a drink in the meantime," said Jaeger. "And don't bring us pasta with cheese and cream, even if we order it." They laughed again. The waiter shrugged and disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. They sat across from each other and laughed. He looked at her, she looked at him, and they couldn't stop. He was having fun, really fun. He might never have had so much fun in his life. He didn't notice how he put his hand back in his pocket. 1, 2, 3. 14. He tensed up. The laughter disappeared, his lips pressed together tensely. His companion was still smiling, and he was already tensing, as if he had found something slippery and nasty in his pocket. The longer he kept his hand in his pocket, the more the girl noticed his transformation. He began to look like someone who had been told very bad news, such as that a house had burned down or someone close to him had died. "Is everything all right?" she asked. She looked a little preoccupied now too. Without answering, he shook his head the way people do when they swat away an annoying fly. 1, 2, 3. 14. The trembling hand counted the coins once more. There were 14. Panic gradually began to take hold of him. He wanted to dump the coins on the table, and count them in the bright light. But he had never done so, the coins were always in his pocket. A lump rolled up in his throat, his eyes flickered, and his hand continued to go through the coins on automatic. 14. Sweat broke out on his forehead. The girl heard the jingle of coins in his pocket. "Did you forget the money?" she asked cautiously. "Oh, that's all right." "Quiet," he interrupted her, his fingers probing each of the coins. 1, 2, 3. 14. He pulled his chair away from the table and peered under it. The floor was clean, except for a crumpled napkin and a ketchup stain. He looked under the chair, nothing either. Under the pretty legs of his companion, the floor was clean too. Straightening up, he counted the coins again. There were 14. "What's the matter?" There was no more hint of a smile on her face. When she asked the question, he looked at her. At first there was consternation in his eyes, then a faint doubt, then fear. Squinting his left eye, he looked at her even more closely, and his gaze was not much warmer than the temperature of the water in the lake, on a frosty night. "You have to help me," he said in an almost whisper. "You have to. We have to go to the bathroom, and I'll explain everything there." He grabbed her wrist. She felt him squeeze his hand painfully against hers. But she didn't resist, she thought for sure he needed help. She stood up and followed him to the brown door at the very corner of the restaurant. Alexei didn't really like his job, or rather didn't like it at all. All evening he had to be polite, to smile when he did not want to smile at all, and take orders. Tonight one of the customers, a fat man who had drunk a half-liter decanter of vodka, called his bangs aslant. His companions, 2 men and a couple at the next table, laughed. And he stood, blushing profusely, and instead of telling the fat man to go away, asked in a polite tone, "Is there anything else you'd like to order?" He splashed cold water on his face, and looked tiredly at his reflection in the mirror. "And it doesn't look like a braid," he muttered, brushing his bangs to the side with his wet fingers. The shift wasn't over yet. As a junior waiter, he still had to clean the bathroom. But he couldn't help it, his parents didn't want to pay his tuition, and there was no other job in town. He kept telling himself it was just a temporary job, which calmed him down a bit. Soon he would graduate and get a job at some company in his specialty, and then his life would start to be completely different. He picked up a red bucket, the bottom of which was so dirty it was hard to tell what color it was originally. In the other hand he took the mop and strode leisurely toward the toilets. He thought that if he cleaned up quickly he would be in time for the movie night. Of course he would not go alone, but with Olesya. He had only recently gotten to know her. She was a junior in her class, and was considered one of the prettiest girls at school. He never would have thought she could fall for him. But yesterday at uni, she texted him that she wanted to meet. He asked her to go to the movies, she agreed. Thinking of Olesya, of her luxurious blonde hair, with a mop he carelessly pushed the door to the bathroom. It opened with a loud bang. Silence. He listened. No one seemed to be in there. He made his way along the last stall, and pushed it open. His mind was still far from his work when he looked at the toilet. The bucket of water fell out of his hand, the mop and the other shook. He didn't immediately realize that he had stepped with one shoe into a pool of blood. He wanted to scream, but the scream stuck in his throat. On the toilet was Jaeger. He was sitting there, as if he had just done some hard work. For example, he had been unloading coal wagons for 12 hours, or swinging a huge sledgehammer all day long. His hands were bloody and blood stains were visible on his shirt. But Alexei was certain it wasn't his blood. Behind the man, behind the toilet, a blonde woman was lying in an unnatural position. It was hard to guess how she fit there, but it was easy to see that the girl was dead. Through the torn fabric of her blouse could be seen a multitude of bleeding wounds. A knife protruded from a deep cut on her neck, just below the solar plexus. It was a dessert knife. Alexei remembered the man and the girl. They had laughed out loud when he had brought them dinnerware, among which was this knife. Now they did not look like happy people. The girl had her head turned to the side, and was staring at the glass, empty eyes at the tile on the wall. A man was sitting there, picking over some objects in his hands. Overcoming nausea, which was getting more and more insistent, Alexei looked more closely at the man's hands. Coins, he could make out the coins. Some of them were covered in blood, but they were definitely coins. 15, the man's voice was relieved. He looked up at the boy and smiled. There are 15 now. The boy turned sharply, almost slipping in the blood, and rushed away with a loud shout. Igor stared at the point where the guy was standing for a few more moments, and then started counting the coins again. Jaeger understood that he could have just asked her for a coin. But he also understood that then that coin wouldn't be his. He never asked for coins, he obtained them or took them away. They were not to come easily to him. He didn't just get them when he was a boy crawling out from under the bed. Every time he emerged from his hiding place, he was afraid of being grabbed by his father. It wasn't easy for him to get them later, either. True, the last time he'd caught the boy in an alley, he'd taken a big risk. The kid might not have had any change. But he was lucky, there were a couple of coins in the boy's pockets. He picked out the two he was missing, and left the boy lying in the alley among the garbage bags. Jaeger reasoned sensibly that when you have a trouser belt pressed around your neck for several minutes, it is very difficult to stay alive. Where the coin had disappeared to this time, he did not know. But he found a new one. Still hearing the boys shrieking and the hubbub of several other voices, Jaeger wondered if he would be allowed to carry coins in prison.